Well, teacher, today I'm going to talk about English book summary. The name of the book is The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. Okay, The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes are a set composed of 12 stories about different cases of criminology, narrated by Dr. Watson, in which the participation of the investigative qualities of Detective Holmes stand out in a masterful way. In them, Watson, who was married during the Sign of Four case, no longer lives with Holmes, but visits him and helps him to solve the cases. With that said, I'm going to start with the first chapter. In Bohemia. The story begins one night when Sherlock's Dr. Frank Watson pays a visit to his home on Baker Street. Upon entering, the detective will let Watson know that he's waiting for a client who consults him on a case involving the royal family of the Kingdom of Bohemia. Thus, the extravagant visitor arrives and exposes his case. He needs to recover a photograph of himself with a woman, a beautiful actress who blackmails him by publishing it and thus ruining the marriage he will contract with a princess from another kingdom. Sherlock then agrees to recover the photograph with the help of his friend Watson, since the case is interesting and brings with it a good sum of money. However, what Holmes will not know is that his cunning plans and abilities will be insufficient in the face of the cunning and the beauty of Irene Adler, the woman in the portrait who ends up becoming the detective's obsession. The next chapter, The League of the Redheads. This second chapter deals with where Lander is deceived with a simple and well-paying job offer. The redhead's name is Wilson, and he's not very wealthy moneylender who an employee of his encouraged to take a job that they are offering him, the League of the Redheads. Only to the Redheads. It's a simple job and it will give him some free time. The moneylender Wilson has a location near a bank that contains a large stock of gold, and Holmes discovers that Wilson has been tricked into accepting his promises, and his supposed employee, who is a cunning thief named John Clay, can make a tunnel from the lender's premises to the bank and thus be able to rob it. Pacello anticipates, and together with the police, they manage to thwart the robbery. And the next chapter, a case of identity. Sherlock and Watson solve the curious case of Miss Mary Sutherland, a young woman who received a somewhat considerable fixed income from which her mother, a middle-aged woman, and her young stepfather, James Winding, benefit. It's about Mary's stepfather disguising himself and assuming the identity of certain Hosmer Angel. With this, he manages to make his stepdaughter fall in love so that she marries him and thus prevents her from leaving home. And Mr. James loses the income from the rent of the young woman since he administers them. But the day that they are going to get married, James disappears, leaving the young woman heartbroken. And for that reason, she goes to Detective Holmes. Upon hearing the story of the young Mary, makes the investigations. Sherlock manages to clarify the case. He meets with James and warns him not to continue cheating on his stepdaughter, that although he wouldn't go to jail, he could receive a severe beating for being so heartless. However, he doesn't tell the details to Mrs. Mary, but advises her to forget about Hosmer Angel, assuring her that he will never appear again. Holmes claimed that it was not convenient to disappoint a woman. The next chapter, The Mystery of the Boston Vivaldi. In this chapter, Holmes, together with Dr. Watson, clarify a murder that occurred on a farm and for which the victim's son is being accused. The situation occurs that Mr. Charles McCarthy is murdered, how some witness saw his son James McCarthy following him and carrying a shotgun, pointed him out as the main suspect. But Holmes and Watson, who spent time at the Boscombe estate, managed to discover that the neighboring McCarthy Londoner, Mr. John Turner, was being blackmailed by Mr. Charles McCarthy, and that's why he murdered him. The blackmail consists of Mary, his only daughter, Alice to McCarthy's only son. Otherwise, Mr. McCarthy would confess that Mr. Turner was a former assailant. Holmes manages to get the old and dying Mr. Turner to confess, but doesn't expose him to the authorities due to being in his last days, but makes a legal defense in favor of James McCarthy, and he manages to be acquitted of the murder of his father, although he doesn't get to know that his father-in-law was the one who killed his father. Neither did Miss Alice find out. Both marry without knowing more about the case. The next chapter, the 5 seeds of orange. In this chapter, Sherlock and his assistant, Mr. Watson, the story is told of a militant of the Ku Klux Klan who, to warn his victims of death, sends them an envelope with 5 orange seeds, and days later he murders them. Holmes discovers the identity of the murderer, but late because he has already killed some members of the family named Openshaw. Sherlock Holmes, the case was presented by a young man named John Openshaw, who told him that his father Joseph was found dead because of an accident, but before he had received the letter with the 5 orange seeds, an envelope with the same content had been received by him, John Openshaw. Holmes accepts the case, and days later the young man is found dead. Holmes discovered the murderer, but he has fled in a boat. The next chapter, The Man with the Twisted Lip. In this chapter, it's narrated how a man pretends to be a beggar, since in this way he obtains more money than in his informal job. His wife goes to Holmes because she believes that her husband has been murdered by a beggar. Sherlock discovers the situation of the wife's husband, and with clarifying the case, she doesn't tell the woman anything to avoid embarrassment, since her husband was posing as a beggar. The next chapter, the Blue Carbuncle. In this chapter, during Christmas, Sherlock Holmes meets a goose and prepares a Christmas dinner, but he's surprised to discover in the entrails of the animal a ewe that he recognized as belonging to the queen. In his investigations, he discovered that the thief, and this tells him that the goose was given to him by mistake. The thief, when he repents, is forgiven. The next chapter, The Band of Polka Dots. In this 8th chapter, it's about an history event where an evil stepfather, widower, prisoner of greed, has murdered one of his stepdaughters and tries to do the same with the other in order to seize the fortune of this young woman. Holmes discovers his plan, and to the bad luck of the stepfather, this is bitten by a snake. So he dies, and Sherlock ends the case. The next chapter, The Engineer's Thumb Finger. In this chapter, it's about the story of a patient of Dr. Watson Mr. Victor Hadley. He is an engineer who is hired by some Germans in order to make repairs to a machine, but loses a finger in a fact, what he considers a crime. Holmes investigates and discovers that they are money counterfeiters, but they escape the scope of the law. The next chapter, the single aristocrat. This chapter is a story where romance prevails, tells that Mr. London, descendant of a duke, goes to Sherlock Holmes for the disappearance of his wife, Katie Dobran, a woman here to a considerable fortune, that he thinks she's dead, but seeks Sherlock and Watson to investigate if she's really dead and the details of the case. Sherlock discovered that Mrs. Hattie Durham is not missing, but had eloped after his ecclesiastical wedding with her former husband, a man of few assets named Frank, whom she believed dead, since he had long gone in search fortunately for Hattie's father to accept it. When he found out about her, he looked for a way that the others would find out, but Hattie made the mistake of eloping, creating confusion. Next chapter, the Bearer's Headband. In this chapter, in which Holmes solves the case of the theft of some jewels belonging to a royal crown, for the fact the son of the banker and custodian of the royal jewels is accused, but Mr. Alexander Holder doesn't believe that his son Arthur has committed the robbery. Holmes discovered that the robbery was carried out by the niece of the banker and the boyfriend of this, with the younger, with which the young Arthur is released. The last chapter, the Cooper Vicious Mystery. The detective ingenuity of Detective Sherlock and his companion Dr. Watson is manifest once again when solving the case of the young governess Violet Hunter, who to accept a well-paid job had to cut her hair, wear a dress in electric blue tone, and listen to the good contractor jokes. Sherlock, whom the young nanny consulted before taking the job, to whom he offered to help in case of danger. 2 weeks later, Holmes received a telegram from Manchester Cooper Beach's country mansion from Miss Hunter, in which asking Holmes for the urgent favor of going to the town and meeting at the Black Swan Hotel. Miss Hunter tells Holmes about the eccentricities of the Ricostal family. Violet Hunter gives him the details of the urgency of her telegram, since she discovered that the butler named Toller Agatha was guarding a secret room, which she entered by chance, and where she discovered a hiding room with some great secret for which she was threatened. If she entered there again, Sherlock plans a way to find out if someone is locked in that room. Holmes, Watson, and Mr. Hunter take advantage of the fact that the records have fled and open the mysterious room. But to their surprise, they don't find anyone. But Mr. Recostal arrives, who has released the ward dog. However, the dog who was hungry breaks Recostal's neck. When the housekeeper appears, she tells them that Miss Alice Recostal had in love with her boyfriend, werewolf, she helped them. And that's all. Thank you, teacher.